How you doing, young man?
Victory is mine. Victory is mine. Victory today is mine.
I told Satan, what? Get thee behind. What? Victory today is mine.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. All right. My name is, and you probably heard it all day long, Claudette Snorton, and I am the pastor of Greater St. James Seminary Church in Winchester. We'll begin our morning with me telling you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to ask each of you to tell me your name, your church contact, and why you decided to come in here and be with me when there were other places to be. All right, so let's start. I am Claudette. I am the great-granddaughter of a Methodist preacher. My great-grandfather rode a horse on a circuit before there was a CME church. I am the daughter of a CME pastor. My father was a pastor for many years until he passed on. I am the niece. My uncle and 4 aunts were ministers or pastors in the CME church. I have 2 sisters. My younger sister is a pastor here in Louisville. And my older sister is the first female bishop in the CME church. So, I can tell you about church. I have 2 children. My oldest is Dominique and her husband is a Brima. They've been in Africa for the last 5 weeks and they are coming home today. Can't wait. And my son, William. William is the father of Jordan. Jordan is the best thing since sliced bread. No one told me how wonderful grandchildren were. And Jordan is 2 going on 30. So that's about me. We'll start over here and we'll go from there.
You hollered at your father. My name's William Smith, and I pastor 2 churches, Round Hill and Presbyterian churches in downtown Tennessee.
My name is Harry McElvaney, and I'm the pastor of Shampoo Chapel A&E Zion Church in Louisville, Kentucky.
My name is Marsha Watkins, and I'm beginning of ministry. And I go to Lane Tabernacle Church.
Keith Mitchell, and I'm a first-year MDiv student here at LPTS.
Mark Thomas, I'm an MDiv student at Baptist Seminary, Kentucky, and interim pastor in Georgetown, Kentucky.
Ben Burton, I am a chaplain with Norton Healthcare here in Louisville and part-time pastor at Cameron Baptist Church in Park County, Kentucky.
Brandon Holt, I'm also a chaplain at Norton Healthcare here in Louisville.
Melanie Hardison, Presbyterian minister and chaplain at Norton.
Reverend Diane Flora. I work with House Memorial in Louisville, Kentucky, and also First Congregation in Louisville, Kentucky.
Reginald Barnes, pastor of Brown Memorial City Church, here in Louisville.
Ruby Crown, pastor, Mary's Chapel A&E Church in Fayetteville, Tennessee.
Vanessa Holdman, I'm the pastor of St. John A&E Church and Such Chapel A&E Church in Lincoln County.
Elder Trey Cranford, I'm a church planter with RPCNA, and particularly at the Louisville Reformed Presbyterian Church here.
I am Lavia Welch. I am a third year MDiv. Just about the 3rd year. I am doing church placement with New Life Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I am a Hebrew Israelite by faith tradition.
And I'm Steve Cook. I'm currently serving as the acting dean, and I'm the registrar at Louisville Seminary. And I attend the Episcopal Church of the Advent on the corner of Baxter and Broadway here in Louisville. My name's Johnny Edwards. I'm the son of George Edwards, who is the namesake of this lecture series. And so happy to see everyone here.
And I'm Ginger Edwards. I'm the daughter of George Edwards, who used to be a professor here at the seminary. And actually, we wanted to bring my mother, who is still living. She'll be 98 this year. But she did not quite make it today.
Welcome you.
Scott Williamson, and I am a professor of theological ethics here at the seminary now for 20 years, 20 plus, and I'm inspired by the legacy of the Edwards.
I'm Brandy Belkey. I'm a first-year MDiv student here at Louisville Seminary.
I'm Heather McIntyre. I'm a third-year MDiv student here at Louisville, and I'm also the pulpit supply for Henryville Community Presbyterian Church and Mount Lebanon Presbyterian Church in the Southern Hills Parish of Indiana.
Reese Harris, first year MDiv.
Rachel Lemke. I'm a first-year MDiv student.
Yane Park, first year MDiv student, and then I'm also helping the church, Korean Presbyterian of Indianapolis, as a youth pastor.
Calvin Holly, pastor of the Second Baptist Church in Fairfield, Kentucky.
Reverend Ross Colette, the pastor of the St. John Anglican Church, Washington.
Joyce Connor, daughter of St. John Anglican Church, Washington, Kentucky.
Doris Evans, I'm the chaplain at the Roby Banks VA Hospital, and I'm vice president of the National Black Presbyterian Caucus.
I am John Duckworth. I am an old retiree for 20 years, and I enjoy my grandkids and great-grandkids.
I'm Gina Meester. I'm a third-year dual degree student here at the seminary.
Well, welcome to everyone. Today we're going to talk a little bit about lay and pastoral relationships. I'm probably not going to say anything that you don't already know, because you've been in the trenches for some time, a lot of you. But if you're like me, sometimes it's just nice to know that somebody else is in the same boat I'm in. So let's talk a little bit about the rural church and the rural community stigma. What makes a place somewhere? All too often we think of somewheres in the world of places like big urban areas or beachy coastal areas that have shopping and entertainment, or at least mountain regions where they have skiing and snowboarding. For most of the country, rural areas are a place where we go see grandma and grandpa. We drop in and we zip on out. There are not many people who choose to live in the backwoods. There's not many people who choose to live in the wide open spaces. There are not too many people that choose to live in areas where when the street lights come on, if there are street lights, they roll up the sidewalk. For a lot of people, we describe our rural towns. We're 15 miles from Lexington. That's where Winchester is. Or even worse, we're in the middle of nowhere. This devaluation of rural places and rural spaces give us an idea that they are in non-places. Places that are indistinct, impersonal, a place that's an end result. For many people, a rural area, a rural place is not where they want to be. How many of us want to be in nowhere? Not many of us. The mindset of rural spaces being nowhere goes from the layperson people to the pastor. Now, this inability to love rural spaces gives us something called acedia. And acedia is where the church loses its self-worth. It causes pastors and lay leaders to sink into an idea, it doesn't matter. we don't care, or what's the point? The Greek word acedia means without care. When people are caught up and bound up in acedia, they don't give their very best. How many of us have ever heard somebody that said, you know, if I was somewhere else, I could make a difference. Or if I was just in a bigger spot, life would be better. Now I'm going to challenge that today. And I'm going to say that the same Jesus that's in the large urban areas is in the rural areas. There is a rural Jesus. Hallelujah.
Amen.
Jesus loves the small towns. In Brad Roth's book, God's Country, he states, Christ loves the rural church. He goes on to say, in fact, I am convinced there is no church without the rural church. That's a pretty strong statement, isn't it? For those in urban ministry, that might make them a little angry or what's he talking about? He goes on to tell us that the rural church represents the church's commitment to ministry. Ministry that is in the margins. And what's ministry in the margins? Ministry in the margins is defined as ministering to people who believe or have the perception that they are powerless. Or ministry that appears to be unimportant. If you've ever been in a rural church, that is so untrue. We know that rural communities often seem less than or unable to fully participate in the economics of the world. But we all know that it's a whole lot more rural places than urban places. For many, the rural has a positive connotation. If you're like me, my family grew up in a small town of Crofton, Kentucky. As of right now, there are 500 people that live in Crofton. You know, when you think about those rural churches, you envision the green, lush grass, and on the top of the hill is a sweet little country church. Or you think about people with maybe a little bit of dirt under their fingernails, or being baptized in the creek, or as they call it, the creek down the road. But for some folks, when they think of rural, they think of uneducated, tobacco chewing, pickup driving hicks. People without a future, people who are stuck. Very often, rural communities are either idealized or devalued. This double-edged view of what the rural world is like makes people either cherish, ooh, I really want to be there, or go, not me. Unfortunately, even denominational leaders are not immune to having the ideas of the stigma of the rural community. So often, ministers who are sent to rural communities are seen as less than. They send their best and brightest to the urban areas. My second church, I had a population of about 100 members. On Sunday, I saw about 50 or 60 people. Then I was reassigned. I went to a much smaller church, a church that was 2 hours away. And after I received my assignment, the very first question someone asked me, hey, what'd you do? What happened? It was seen that that church was a demotion and not a promotion. But I'm going to tell you what, my ministry grew by leaps and bounds in that little church in the country. We must move from the ideas that the rural church is substandard to understanding its makeup. Now, the next section says, who are you? How many of us know who we are? I mean, we're somebody's daughter or somebody's son, or we might be somebody's mother or somebody's father. But in the church, we too have a role. In Brad Roth's book, God's Country, Roth tells us our first commitment to the rural church is to not shake everything up, but to be present with the people and the church where we are. So often as a new pastor, we come to a church and we're going to carry out our agenda. This happens without the thought to the community standards or to the community's principle, without a thought of the community's history, or with little or any thought about the significance of what changes might do to the community. Now, I have a friend, nope, wasn't me. I have a friend that went to a rural church and decided to move the date of the church anniversary. You got that right. It was always the first Sunday to the third Sunday. Now my friend didn't bother to check to find out that the church down the road always had their church anniversary on the third Sunday. Needless to say, the congregation never forgave that pastor, because only a handful of people came to that service. That particular service was their biggest fundraiser of the year, and they only took in a fourth of what they normally do. And the church itself took a big hit in the community because it lost some of its power. Now there's an old song that says, everything must change. And we know that's true. Everything has to change. But often change comes a bit slower in the rural church. So often a pastor shows up and flexes his or her agenda and shakes things up. You know, change always shakes things up. Now, when we as the pastor, when the people start to kind of fuss a little bit, we go into combative mode, which makes us aggressive. None of us have been aggressive here. Makes us argumentative, and sometimes even a bit belligerent. Then this causes a stand-up. You ever been in a church fight? It's the pastor and the folks over here, the community over there, all the folks over here, and the pastor over there. It's not fun, and it's not pretty. According to Roth, the one thing we all should learn to do, especially if you are a rural pastor, is to abide. The word abide. And abide means to pay attention to bear with, to accept, to support, to do so without fading or without being lost. In other words, it's getting to know the ins and outs of the people in the community. Knowing who the saints and the not so saintly are. Oftentimes in rural communities, there's a profound sense of loss. Rural churches often feel like the leftovers, never the main course. They often lose their children, their best and their brightest, to the lures of the city. When we abide according to Ralph, we give our presence and ourselves. We recognize that change does take place. We see it in the stories. We see it in the attitudes. We see it in the actions within the community. Change does take time. Now, this section talks about the roles that we play. How many of us in our church has an unofficial pastor? This is the person you know that can make or break any effort in your church. If brother or sister such and such is on board, things go mighty well. But if they are not, it's an uphill battle, to say the least. The unofficial pastor, if they agree, life is good. But that doesn't mean that you should not try something new because the unofficial pastor does not agree. But I certainly suggest that you try to get them on your side first. How many of us have a member that's the town crier? The person that can get the information out, whether it's good information or bad information, faster than the fastest internet or Facebook feed. We all do. And they tell all your church's business. And they let everybody know about everything. I can always tell if my church meetings go well by how many phone calls I get after church. What about the fusser? Everybody's church has a fusser. Is the sanctuary too hot? Is the sanctuary too cold? Are the drums too loud? Is the newest member's hymn line a little short? The fusser's gonna tell you. Now, a lot of people want to ignore the fusser, but most of the time the fusser is really saying what everybody else thinks. So don't ignore them. Understand them. I didn't say take everything they had specifically, but don't ignore it. What about, thank God for these folks, the member that's just going to be there. If you have something going on, they're going to be there to help. They're the ones that sweep the floor. They're the ones that help do the stuff that needs to get done. They don't want to lead anything. They don't want to be in charge of anything. They are just there. If you're like me, I hope you have more than one. You have 3 or 4. Don't forget the member that wants to be the chair of everything. Everybody has one of those too. Sister such and such been the chair of the women's rally for the last 52 years. And whether they are effective or not, the church will follow in if they are not effective, if they are not the chair. That's a hard one to feel sometimes. That's a hard one to maneuver sometimes. And a lot of times you have to maybe let them do something, but maybe have somebody with them. I found that if you get a younger person to work with them, I want you to help train such and such, so when you can't do this, that kind of works out a little bit. Now, how many of us have members, and maybe I don't have this stuff going on in your church. How many of us have folks that only show up for photo ops? They only show up when the bishop's in town. They only show up when we're having a big dinner. Everybody has those. Now, we're not talking about because they come because they're hungry. We're coming because they came to help and to take a couple of plates with them too. These are all roles that people have in the church. And how many of us have a member that reminds the new pastor that, well, that ain't the way we used to do it. We've always done it like this. Or when Reverend such and such was here, things went real well. And since he left, the church has gone to hell. We all have that too. Each of these roles are things that you find in, I don't care what church you're in, whether it be urban or rural, but it really stands out in a rural church because there's fewer people. And learning how to maneuver in those quadrants is important. Being able to abide and stay in the midst of individuals and in their roles makes the church community a better place. And not trying to force stuff down people's throats. Now, navigating in the rural church. In the rural community, the rural pastor must learn, and you have to learn how to navigate in the real church. Most often, the pastor becomes the spiritual leader of not just their church, but the community at large. The rural pastor doesn't serve their individual church alone, but becomes a surrogate pastor to the members of their church family, not their church family, and their members too. He or she serves as the pastor of the community's unchurched, or the pastor when the community's church pastor isn't there. In other words, if Pastor such and such lives 100 miles away, you become their pastor too. One of my church members came to church. She was a regular church goer, but her husband did not go to my church, and he became quite ill. And the pastor never went to go visit him. His pastor did. So one Sunday she asked me to go to see this particular gentleman. And I went and prayed with him and talked to him and all that. Eventually the man ended up becoming a member of my church. But a lot of times we're afraid to cross those boundaries. In the rural church, you better make sure that you not only visit your folks, but visit the other folks too. It's important when you go to the nursing home, you better not just go see that one member that's yours. You better stop at the next 2 or 3 rooms and how you doing? Can I pray for you? Can I pray with you? All that is important because it's about relationships. To be an effective rural pastor, one must become a part of the community. Now that doesn't mean you necessarily live in the community, but you better be a part of it. You need to know what's going on, you need to know who's sick, you need to know when there's going to be the community lunch, and you need to be there. And a lot of times people, I was a teacher, so it was a little hard for me sometimes to be in certain places at certain times. But you better learn how to get to where you get. And if you can't be there, you better send somebody. The church exists in the real world. It's not just some fake, fictitious something. And in the church, there's racism, there's sexism, there's classism, there's poverty. Everybody in your church is not rich, but everybody is poor. Some of them are poor. Some folks may have inadequate housing. Some people may lack food. You'd be surprised. I had a senior citizen that I came to find out didn't really have food to eat. You can preach Jesus loves you all Sunday and on Wednesday nights. But when somebody comes to you with hungry children, and somebody comes to you with a rat bite on his leg, if somebody comes to you facing spousal abuse, you have to do more than just pray. You got to do something. Something has to be done. Pastors, and particularly rural pastors, have to know where there are immediate services. And for sometimes, there's not even the services to have at all. Sometimes you have to be creative and find ways of helping, find ways of doing for people, even if your area does not have it. Rural areas often have limited resources. Rural pastors, as well as rural churches, have to help fill in the gaps. Glenn Damon, in his book, The Forgotten Church, tells us that the church can make an impact in the community only when it engages people through activities of everyday life. People need something every single day. And we have to, as the church, we have to be available to help assist that need. if that means promoting the poor or providing assistance for the community's most vulnerable, whatever it is, we have to, as the church, help to do that. A church that isolates itself from the community and community issues will have little influence in the community. How many churches do you know that are in the country and they have food pantry? How many churches do you know they have that clothes closet? They might have a coat from back in 1964. But you know what, when you don't have a coat, whether it's in 1964 or today, it's a nice warm thing to have. How many churches do you know that provide assistance? And maybe they don't do it all, but maybe they work with the church down the road. And the two churches together gets this done for this group, or gets that done for that group. Forming relationships sometimes are the things that you have to do to make sure things get done. It doesn't matter who gets the credit. It matters that the community has what it needs, right? Not only must rural pastors assist in providing for the spiritual and physical growth of the community, rural pastors, to navigate in the rural community, have to become good communicators. How many of us know the art of small talk? Talking about the weather. Talking about, I couldn't tell you anything about the soil, but I'm going to act like I know what I'm talking about. Stopping and chatting with the people in your community is vital. You know, a lot of times, I got stuff to do. I got to be over here. I got this thing going on next. But you bet, nothing will get you in more trouble than being too busy. Looking at those pictures of those grandbabies, you better stop. Talking about their children, you better listen. All of those things are very important, especially in a rural community. They want to know that you care about what they care about. That's being a part of the community. Knowing that brother such and such's grandson played basketball and he scored 13 points last week, that's important. Knowing that sister such and such has the prettiest tulips in the county, that's important. Knowing about the community will make a big difference, especially for a new pastor. You already don't know that much about the people or about the community, but getting those little tidbits help you to be able to maneuver, navigate in the community. Now, one of my young people works at a coffee shop. Now, if you saw me this morning, what was I drinking? Anybody say some Starbucks? That's right. I am a Starbucks fan, and I don't apologize. But this young man worked in the local coffee shop, and he'd been telling me about what he did, and he said, "Oh, I know how to make a grande non-fat latte with no foam. Much better than I do with Starbucks." So one week, on a Saturday, I came early, and I stopped at the coffee shop. He was so excited to see me. He introduced me to everybody in the coffee shop, including his manager. Maybe a month later, we were having some initiative at our church. And when people come to your church, what do you want to give them? A little coffee. So I called the coffee shop. And because the man knew my name and knew who I was, what happened? We got free coffee. Now, would he have done that? Probably, or maybe not, I don't know. But because he knew who I was, and because he knew that it would garner him a little favor with his employee, our church got the free coffee. But forming that relationship was very, very important. Now, another thing, when you navigate in the rural community, one thing you have to do is keep your business your business.
That shit is single.
And I am. Now, as pastors, we already know this. We know that it's really important that we keep our business our business. But when you are in a rural community, it's 3 times more important, maybe 5. You can't go to Walmart and buy your beer. No, not a single one of your members might see it. But the cashier is probably a member's cousin's sister. Who's gonna call the cousin? Who's gonna call the sister? Who's gonna call the member? And not only did you buy some beer, you didn't buy a 6-pack, you bought 2 cases, and you were slurring your words. About the time they get you, because you know, a story has a way of being embellished. And that's what happens. You know, pastors feel like their life is in a bubble. Everybody's looking in. It's really that way in a small town. Reverend McIntosh said, especially if you're single, oh Lord. My members introduce me as, oh, this is our pastor, she's not married. Every time we go anywhere. That's the truth. And and you just have to smile and go, oh Lord. They know everything I wear. Ooh, Reverend, you didn't wear that. Where'd you get that? And I have a thing about flowers. I have many. And where you get all the, you be quiet. That's my roommate. She knows. And where'd you get that flower? Where'd you get that? They pay attention. They notice. They know what goes on. Whether you think they do or whether you think they should. They do. Your reputation matters. How you look, how you sound, how you act, how you dress. It reflects upon your church and it reflects upon you. Now, in a small town, it is hard to gain a reputation, but it is very easy and it only takes one thing to lose it. Any questions? Well, we might inquire. The next section is thriving ministries, and I don't know what works in your community. And yes.
So that's what I was going to ask you about community ministries. Like, what type of things do you do in your community with the size of the people that you have in your community? What do you do?
It's really important, first of all, that you find out what the community is interested in. My church in particular is very concerned about the young people. And so our first initiative we have tried is to include the children in whatever it is we're doing. Something that, an after-school program is something that can be very easily done without a lot of money. I always recommend that whoever works for the church has a background check. You know, they might be in the church, but everybody doesn't have a church in them. So it's important that they have a background check. Then you have to have an adequate space, a few books, or if you're helping with homework, you get those assignments from the teachers. And when I was teaching, I would just send like a month in advance. We're going to be working on A, B, and C. And now if they're in high school, I couldn't help them. But I could help a 3rd grader. We could work on math, we could work on spelling, we could work on reading, and most of your people can do that. And a lot of times it's just being present, providing a nutritious snack. There are sometimes health codes or rules that you have to follow, and those are the things that you have to check with your own, like health department or with the community. Something that, when I'm from Humpiesville, something that we did was we became a site for lunch in the summer. The kids would come, they would have lunch. We didn't have to cook it. We would have to go to a specific place, pick it up, serve it. Now that means that you had to do a few of the things that the school system required. There'd have to be, you have to go through some training and things. But it would be something that was very simple. It didn't cost the church a lot of money, but it certainly made a big difference in the community. Because for a lot of kids, that's the only meal they got. And at least you knew they had something nutritious that day. Another community initiative that is really simple is a senior outing day, where the seniors come, you can provide food, and then of course there's some other things that you have to do with that as far as health department goes. But if they bought their own lunch or bought a snack, all you have to do is to provide someone being there, and again I say, have a background check. And they have a place where they can meet with a friend and play cards or play board games or just talk to each other, listen to music. Oh, that's really, really important. In my community, we have a lot of seniors, and they look forward to that once a month coming to the church. They don't meet in the sanctuary, they meet in the fellowship hall, and they just enjoy each other's company. That it costs a lot of money, and that's a community initiative. A food pantry, or some churches even go big time and get a food co-op. Food co-ops are a little bit more labor intensive because you have to have a board and you have to be able to get your food from a particular place. But any of these initiatives are things that you can do if you're willing to do the work. And if your community doesn't have, don't say that we can't do it because you've been too lazy not to try.
You just spoke of the senior outing. What about senior ministries in your area, your church? Things that would work or would just be outing in front of the kids, with the bishop having that AARP person and the senior ministry consultant. I'm the liaison for the AARP. I just wondered, when I grew up, my ears perked when I heard senior outing, but what about a senior ministry in your churches?
The only thing that's going to stop it is if you don't try. Maybe it won't take off, but maybe it will. But if you don't do anything, you know it's not going to happen. And a lot of times it's our attitude. It's how we boost something. It's how we talk about it. If we make it seem like a positive thing and get one or two of your saintly seniors to boost it, you may only start with 5. You may only start with 3. But you know that when good stuff happens, other folks jump on board. And your 3 might become 10. But if you don't try, you definitely won't get anywhere. And you have to start small, make it as simple as possible. We'll go from there.
Thank you.
Somebody else? Something that's really a big thing now is music or dance ministry. That's
wow.
Gotta know I had it like that.
That was awesome. Great timing. Wow.
Opening your space for kids to take piano lessons. Opening your space for kids to take gymnastics or tumbling, whatever it is. We don't invest time in our children. Now, if you were waiting for me to teach a kid to do some dance, it ain't gonna happen. But you know somebody who may be looking for a space to have that and you offer that space to your church, and you say, if this works out, if you would pay the church $20 a month or something, help pay with help pay for the lights, or something simple. Kids and parents are always looking for somewhere for their children to go, and this would not cost a lot of money. Again, I always stress background checks, having qualified people to do the job, people to be there. You can't just have one person and 13 or 30 kids. You gotta have adequate staff, and you gotta have adequate room. But if you have those things, and no, I'm not talking about a room as big as this building, but a room this big, you could do something. You could put a piano in the corner. If somebody knew how to play a violin or whatever it is, the instrument is. These are things that churches can do without a lot of money. You know, if your church is like mine, we do not have a disposable income. We do not have a tree that we pull off dollar bills off the back, in the back. We rob Peter to pay Paul every month. And it's just out of the grace of God, things work well. So having these type of ministries are important. I would encourage any church that's thinking of having a ministry that you get a 501c3. That gives you a non-tax status. And if you have that non-tax status and then you open yourselves up to be able to look for federal monies, there are plenty, even now, faith-based initiatives. And instead of getting $200, maybe you could get $1,200. And I don't know about you, but $1,200 would help my church do something a lot. So doing those types of things are really important. And there are 8 steps in the process to get that done. If you're really interested in finding out about a 501c3, go to www.501c3.org, and it'll tell you what it will do for you. It'll tell you about the steps. Talk to somebody else's church that already has one. They can tell you what to do. They can tell you how to do it. Relationships, knowing what is out there, working together. That if you don't learn anything else in the whole church, that you better learn. You can't be over there by yourself in the corner, because that's all you'll be, is by yourself. But when you work together, when you do the things that you need to do to make life better for not just your church, but other folks in the community. Okay, somebody in here, I know my church is not the only church that's doing something. I know somebody else's church in here is doing something. You want to share with us?
I didn't hear your question. You know your church is not the
only church that's doing something, providing some type of service, or even thinking about doing something. Yes.
We do ESL classes for the refugees, like an offsite, but we fund it and do all that.
ESL, English is second language. Most of us can speak a little, pretty well. You can help somebody learn how to speak English a little bit. You can help them read a book. That doesn't cost a lot of money, no. Okay, something else.
We have a care food ministry We try to provide fresh vegetables, and sometimes we're fortunate enough to have breads and fruit, and we do provide that. So my kids, we get a lot of potatoes and onions, but we do have fresh food. And then on Sundays, Saturdays and Sundays, our members have the opportunity to, go through those various things and take what they want. We have someone that works for Dairy Care, and this is what the church has, so they have that ministry. And then we also have school supplies that we try to keep our closet replenished for the year, and when children need things of that nature, we try to do that.
Okay, did you hear that? School supplies. How much space does it take to have some pencils? How much space does it take to have some packs of paper? If somebody brought 10 packs of paper, at the beginning of the year, the paper might cost 10 cents. You can stack that paper up, and when little Johnny says, I don't have any paper to go to school with, hey, Johnny, pack of paper. That is ministry. That is ministry and work, because maybe Johnny's mama can't afford a pack of paper this week. But you're helping Johnny feel better about himself. There's nothing worse than for a kid not to have what they need. Yes, ma'am.
My home church has a program where on the weekends or during the week, they put together backpacks for children full of food and sometimes toiletries and necessities for those who are essentially so dependent on school lunches and breakfast that they very rarely, if ever, eat at home on the weekends. So the church will put together backpacks, and they look like just standard bags, so they don't have that shame attached to, I have to take a handout. So they just have fun backpacks that they can give to the kids, and the kids can bring them back and get them refilled every week.
That is a really great thing. I'll tell you a story. As a teacher, one day I was in line behind these little boys, and they were talking to each other, ooh, lunch really looks good today. And the other said, yeah, because I've got to eat a lot, because I know I'm not going to really get anything this weekend because my mama has to work. And I sat there and I didn't really say anything. And he went on to talk about that, by Saturday night, he's a bit hungry. Could you imagine going from Friday evening to Monday and not really having a meal? That happens to a lot of our children. So that backpack ministry is very important. Tell you what, a package of crackers is a whole lot better than no crackers. Amen. Making sure that we do things to help our communities better. Lay and pastors working together, doing what we need to do to make life better for our communities. Now, I have a summary, but you don't need a summary. You already know what I talked about. But knowing these things, these are just a few ideas of things that I've done or things that have gone on in communities where I pastor that have made a difference. So, when you start thinking about your ministry, know who you are. Know that there's a stigma in the rural community. But we can get past the stigma. We can get past that. We may not have what we should have. But you know what we do have? We have Jesus. We have Jesus. We have Jesus. And yes, Jesus loves you, he loves me. But he also loves us when we work together. He also loves us when we do something other than sit on our good intention. He loves us. He loves us when we work. And that's what the church is about. It's about working together. Thank you.
Not a question, just observation. One thing I think that might be beneficial to small congregations, when I say small, it's 200 or less, And I don't know if any of you have congregations where you don't hear a baby cry. But if we've done it 3 times, it's called the medical aspects of the crucifixion of Jesus. And it's done one evening between Holy Week. And it's been very useful because if people grasp really what Jesus went through, they can better appreciate. And then the other thing is, let's see, I guess they were 50 and under, and then they have children 20 and under. So in 2 situations, because of their peers, the father made the statement, well, God is good, but his daughter told him, that's your opinion. So you have children that go to school with and associate with other folk who are non-believers. Now the mother and father, the girl's mother and father are believers, but both of their daughters that are school age, 11th grade and 9th grade, they've been influenced so much. All right, so the father who oversees 6 departments of the power agency was church hurt. And he said, I will not set foot in a church again until I can prove historically and scientifically that God exists. He and another group of engineers, they worked on that, and he's tickled to death because he's proved to himself that historically God exists and scientifically. All right. So I'm going to pick his little brain, he's related to me, and say, hey, I need you to share your data. Because I've got some 50-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds that need to know this. And don't be afraid of technology. I heard something about meetings. Now some of you may make mistakes. I'm old-fashioned. I ain't having no meeting on no Sunday after worship service. Now here's the other thing. When I said use technology, I do it by conference call. I don't use that pen, toll free. So I know everybody that's going to be on board. Call the roll, and there's an agenda. Go by that agenda, and when it takes to a vote, that's called roll. And those business meetings take 60 minutes or less. And that's the key. Information can help you. And then, I don't know, I learned that about the medical aspects of Jesus Christ from a presentation done in 1982 at a white Presbyterian church. Well, I took that and stole it, and, and then you got to know what's going on in your community.
Yes.
There are folk that are lost, and they're going to stay lost unless you grab the bull by the horn.
Pastor, I heard you say that there were 9 people that joined your church last year.
Yes.
And that you have two families where the parents are coming. But the ministry for, as he was to his point, the millennials and Gen Z, those ministries seem to be a little bit more challenging. What do you do?
I have started to get young people. I ask them, what do you like? What are things that you can do? I don't know. Just don't need to be saying I know what a Generation X person wants. Sometimes they don't know either. But getting them into what's going on in the church. Something my young people really, really like is using their phone in church. And someone was suggesting that you have a selfie Sunday. I thought, a selfie Sunday? What's that? Stand up, everybody take selfie. and then send it to somebody else and say, this is what is going on at such and such church. My kids thought that was the most wonderful thing ever. But nobody was fussing at them because they had their phones out. They could take a selfie of what was going on in the church. And it made them have a little recognition. I mean, your pastor lets you use the phone at your church. I don't care, yeah. Whatever, some way of getting them involved. And trust me, we are at the baby stages at this. This Sunday, we are doing morning service. We're going to do Black History Trivia. The kids are so excited about doing something other than sitting and listening to me preach. And they've been studying. They make little posters about people for Black history, so they're going to present those, and then we're going to do again, just something different. Try to find things that engage you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.